Hello everyone, and welcome to Adverbs Part 1, Adverbs of Frequency. So, what is an adverb? An adverb is a part of speech that's mostly used to modify or add information to a verb, adjective, or other adverbs. They can also modify complete sentences, subordinate clauses, and prepositional phrases. Put simply, adverbs provide information about how, when, or where something happens. There are 5 types of adverbs you should know about in English. They are adverbs of frequency, degree, manner, place, and time. In this video, I'll be talking about adverbs of frequency. Adverbs of frequency are adverbs that answer the questions how often or how frequently. They tell us how often something happens, and we use them depending on the percentage of this frequency. Let's take a look at some examples. First, we have always, which is doing something 100% of the time. Like in the example, the man says, "My wife always gets up at 5 a.m. And the girl says, "Wow, that's early." All right, so when he says, "My wife always gets up at 5 a.m., he means 100% of the time she gets up at 5 a.m., meaning every day at 5 a.m., always. All right? Our next adverb is usually, and that's 90% of the time. That's the frequency. So the first girl asks, "What does Karen do on the weekends?" And the other girl replies, "She usually washes her car," which means 90% of the time, or roughly 90% of the time, she washes her car on weekends. Okay? But it's not always. She doesn't always do it. Only usually. Okay? It's a little bit less than always. Got it? Next, we have normally or generally, and that's 80% of the time. In the example, the man says, "My wife normally helps my daughter during the week." And the girl replies, "I think that is great." All right, now normally, that's 80% of the time. It's a little bit less than usually, but it's still very strong. Okay, so we either use normally or generally. They're very, very close. Our next adverb is often, which is a frequency of 70% of the time. Still pretty strong. In our example, "What does Luke do after work?" The first man asks, and the second man replies, "He often works on his car." So 70% of the time, he works on his car, which is still pretty good. Again, it's not exactly 70%, but it's in that range. All right? Next, we have sometimes, which is a frequency of about 50% of the time. In our example, the first woman says, "What do you guys do on the weekends?" And the other girl answers, "Sometimes we go swimming in the lake," meaning 50% of the time we go swimming in the lake. Still, half and half. All right? Our next adverb is occasionally, which is 30% of the time. Now you can really see how this decreases in the frequency. The man asks the girl in the example, "How often does Mark go out to eat?" And the girl answers, "Well, he occasionally eats out on Fridays." So occasionally, think about it as about 30% of the time. All right? Next, we have seldom, which you can see is a very, very low percentage of the time. This is 15% of the time. In our example, the woman asks, "How often do you study at the library?" And the man answers, "I seldom go there anymore. It's easier to study at home." So he seldom goes to the library, which means around 15% of the time, which is very, very low. Got it? And next we have rarely or hardly ever, and that's about 5% of the time. That's the frequency. Extremely low. In the example, the first woman asks, "How often do you drink alcohol?" And the other woman responds, "I rarely drink anymore, but I used to like to drink on the weekends." So rarely, hardly ever, very low percentage of the time. Got it? And our final adverb of frequency is never, which is 0% of the time. Okay? If you say never, that means you don't ever do it. So in our example, the first woman asks, "How often do you eat meat?" And the woman replies, "I never eat meat. I'm a vegetarian." So vegetarians never eat meat. So it's 0% of the time, and that's what never means. And here is a summary of everything that we did in the video. You get to see the frequency adverb, the percentage. So you can pause the video here and just review them. Okay, that's all for this video. I hope it helped you. There'll be more adverb videos on the way. So, thanks again for subscribing, and remember what I always say, keep practicing! See you next time!